let's be honest, there's very little interesting to talk about when it comes to the actual matchup between the Browns and the Bengals, mainly because the game is kind of an afterthought for both teams. The Browns don't stand to gain or really lose anything by winning or losing this game. Maybe it makes Freddie Kitchens more fireable, but I think regardless of the result of this game, that decision will have been made before kickoff on Sunday, at least if the Browns are functioning at a non-dysfunctional level, they would have made that decision before kickoff. As good organizations don't make flash decisions based on one game. And I would hope that the Browns are moving towards that direction. And for the Bengals, well, the Bengals, they can win this game, they can lose it. They're still going to have the number one overall pick. And, what's the difference between 1 and 2 wins if you're the Bengals? So it's really a hard one to break down and talk about. So I'm going to have to approach this one differently because there's still some interesting things and some interesting statements that can be made about this game. It's just looking at it how we've looked at every other game. It's going to have to be just a tad bit different. So let's talk about it. All right, so instead of breaking this down into storylines or matchups, because that's not really going to be what's interesting about this game, let's talk about what can be gained in this game. What can happen here that will, put a positive spin for each team, which is, essentially the win that everybody is looking for. The first one I have here is the Browns putting in a really good offensive showing here, putting up a lot of points can really go a long way as far as good faith with the fans. As it stands right now, if the Browns put up another bad offensive effort, the negativity is going to be overwhelming after this game, and it's going to snowball into OTAs and into training camp, and it's going to make it very hard for Freddie Kitchens to be able to have a clean slate in the second year, especially if he puts out another bad offensive showing. Now, again, they put up 50 points against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's not going to change anybody's mind about the season, but, it is going to lessen the blow of the season just a little bit so that the cause and the rhetoric isn't so negative going into OTAs and training camp as it would if the Browns kind of sputtered into the offseason here. And for the Bengals, something that could be gained is that a win at home in a second win would actually go a long way for the Bengals program and for Zach Taylor, who is a first-year head coach. And wins are always good, even if you're terrible. And, the Bengals have nothing to lose here. And they also have a lot of guys who are trying to prove that they deserve to stay and be a part of what the Bengals are trying to build, presumably around Joe Burrow after they draft him this spring. So, the Bengals could gain something there, and it can, it would help the fan base heal a little bit because there's a lot of apathy and just anger going on in Cincinnati about the state of the team. It'll help things kind of go over better if they gave the Bengals fans a home win against a division rival on the way out of the season. It'll really do a lot to build some optimism and hope going into next year, which I think there's going to be a lot of from Bengals fans because they're going to have a new quarterback to pair with this new era that they're going with Zach Taylor. Another thing for the Browns I think could go a long way is get some of these milestones that are up there. There haven't been a lot of few positives for the Browns this season. There have not been high points really. And whatever high points they have been erased by the brilliance of other teams. So for the Browns, whatever small victories they can get and claim this season are very valuable at this point, seeing how big of a disappointment this season has been. And you have quite a few milestones that are within reach for the Browns this season. You have Nick Chubb going for a rushing title, which would be great. It would be the first time a Cleveland Brown has won the rushing title in the expansion era for the Browns. You could have Jarvis and Odell both go over 1,000 yards. If Odell gets to 1,000, I think he's like 28 yards away. So if he's active, he will get over 1,000. So again, that would be a milestone to have two receivers go over 1,000 for the first time since 2007. And then also you can get Jarvis to 1,200, which would be the second highest in the expansion era, I believe, behind Josh Gordon's 1,600-yard season. And, it'd just give the Browns some positive things to build off of going into next year, which would hopefully be more successful. Having a running back that has the rushing title is going to be something that you're going to want to build off of. Having two 1,000-yard wide receivers is going to be something you're going to want to build off of. Hopefully, Baker Mayfield plays a clean game. He doesn't throw a ton of interceptions. That could be something to build off of. Right now, the Browns and Freddie Kitchens especially, they need some positivity in any way to build off and to carry into the offseason. And again, if they go in there and they beat the Bengals by 60-0, it's going to be an initial jolt of positivity, but, there's still going to be frustration in there. I'm not saying one win here is going to wash away a lot of frustration, but it will go a long way into lessening the blow, which might pay dividends when we get to the offseason and the training camp and the kind of atmosphere around the team. Because, I don't think it's going to be as optimistic as the last offseason was, but, it can still be positive more than it is negative if the Browns can kind of roll some positive momentum into the end of this season, into the offseason. So those are the things that I think that each team has to gain. Let's look at the injury report and break down some game stuff. All right, so some of the key inactives for this game, or the guys who are questionable, and the Browns have a ton of them. Odell Beckham is questionable. He practiced twice this week, but did not practice on Friday because of illness. Farrell Brown is questionable. He's probably not going to be active. He never is. Kendall Lamb's probably not going to be active. Sheldon Richardson is questionable. Ricky Seals-Jones is questionable. J.C. Treader is questionable, but I expect him to play. And Olivier Vernon is questionable, and I don't expect him to play. And for the Bengals, they have Stanley Morgan, who is questionable, and William Jackson, who is flat out for this game. So there will be no William Jackson this week for Cincinnati Bengals. And essentially what that means is that it's going to be an opportunity for the Browns wide receivers to make a difference and to play and get a ton of yards, because William Jackson is the Bengals' best corner by far. So that is going to be a huge opportunity. And for the Bengals, I think this is an opportunity for them to put up a lot of points. The Browns already didn't have a strong defensive line. They're going to be out without Olivier Vernon, possibly without Sheldon Richardson. With Sheldon Richardson, the Bengals in Cleveland ran all over the Browns. This would be a great opportunity for Joe Mixon to gain even more positive momentum going into the offseason. So with the injury report being set, let's jump into the win criteria. And for the Bengals, this win criteria is going to be simple. You're going to want to run the ball often. You want to get Joe Mixon started, maybe even some Gio Bernard, but really Joe Mixon, you're going to want to get him on the edge because you're going to be able to get the edge all day on the Browns. And also for the Bengals defense, you're going to want to manufacture an edge rush. The Browns have not done any good against an edge rush all season. They struggled when the Bengals gave them a decent edge rush last game. Continue to do that, and they can have a path to win this game. Also, the Bengals are going to have to finish in the red zone. They were able to drive and move the ball a lot in Cleveland. They just weren't able to finish these drives and get the points necessary in order to beat the Browns in Cleveland. In order to beat the Browns in Cincinnati, they're going to have to finish those drives. They're going to have to get those points in order to beat the Browns. And then also for the Bengals, you're going to want to play a clean, turnover-free game. Turnovers and those kind of mistakes have kind of plagued the Bengals season this year. They've played hard every game. For the Browns, it's going to be one, come ready to play. The Browns have not come ready to play on multiple occasions, and they have come ready to play on multiple occasions. In Pittsburgh, they punched Pittsburgh in the mouth to start the game. They kind of withered out at the end, but they punched them in the mouth to start that game in Heinz Field. Against the Baltimore Ravens, they punched the Baltimore Ravens in the mouth at the beginning of both of those games a little bit, defensively and offensively. And, they were able to have a lead in both of those games. But again, in the last game against the Ravens, they kind of let it wither out. So the Browns have to come ready to play, and they have to keep that intensity for the entire length of the game. I don't think the Bengals are going to hand you a win. They didn't hand you a win in Cleveland. I don't think they're going to hand you a win in Cincinnati. And I think the Bengals want to get a division win when it's all said and done. Also, for the Cleveland Browns, you're going to want to keep Baker upright. This game is going to be about how well can Baker take advantage of the weakened secondary of the Bengals. No William Jackson. They're already without a bunch of corners. So that means they're going to have guys that you would not want to cover Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham out there. Can Baker Mayfield take advantage? Can Baker Mayfield not get sacked 100 times in order to take advantage? That is going to be a huge question during this game. And the second thing is utilize the people who make sense to utilize. The Browns have tried to get too creative at points and try to throw people off guard. This game can just use a healthy chunk of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb on the edge, some play action passing with Odell Beckham down the field, and then a lot of Jarvis Landry in between. That's all the Browns need to do this week in order to get this ball going. But, sometimes the simple option isn't what this team and coaching staff opts for, which is what drives people crazy about this coaching staff, to be fair. So again, my last win criteria thing is something I kind of mentioned earlier, but use the play action. Last week against Baltimore, it blew my mind watching that game and watching the coverages that the Baltimore Ravens were out in, especially every time that the Browns went into a I or single back formation with a extra eligible tackle, that they would leave Odell Beckham pretty much on an island with Jimmy Smith every single time that the Browns went there. And the Browns only went to the deep play action pass twice. That's ridiculous. They got to learn to take advantage of those opportunities and see them and really attack those opportunities. I don't know why Odell hasn't gotten one play action post route this season. It really makes no sense to me. I hope to see some of that this week. I think it'll really pay dividends. I think Odell could have a huge game. I think Jarvis can have a huge game. But again, the Browns have to keep things simple. Now, before I jump into this win-loss prediction, I'm going to want to talk a little bit about the problem with the 2019 Browns and one of the things that drove me crazy about them. One, it's their inability to just keep things to be simple. They always have to add a wrinkle or add a complication to things that sometimes I just believe they can go the simple route because they're talented enough to do it. I think sometimes Freddie gets kind of caught into trying to manufacture things when they don't have to be manufactured. I think he gets caught into thinking that he has to manufacture ways for Odell Beckham to get open, when the reality is Odell Beckham because you don't have to manufacture ways to get him open. I think they manufacture ways to try to get Nick Chubb space in a run game, when if you just give Nick Chubb the edge, he'll find space. Sometimes these things aren't about scheme. Sometimes these things aren't about how complicated you've made that. And that's not an issue if that was just what they start the season with. But why there's so much heat on Freddie Kitchens and why there's been so much backlash on the things that Freddie Kitchens has done so far this season is because the lack of adjustment that has happened, not during games, but during the entire season. This team has not changed from what that disappointment was in Tennessee. From week 1 to week 17, there has not been a significant adjustment, some significant changes, a significant tonal shift in what this offense is trying to do. It's been the same stuff. It's just different degrees of if it works or not. And that has been the problem. I think that's why the seat is so hot as far as the fans go with Freddie Kitchens. Now, that being said, going into this game, what do I think is going to happen? I think the Browns are going to be able to win this one 35-14. I think it's going to be a pretty handed win. The Browns are going to go in there, try to handle some business, get some of these milestones taken care of, and try to roll in whatever positivity they can into the offseason. Again, there's not a ton there to grab in Cincinnati, but whatever you can, grab it and roll it into the offseason so it doesn't become an avalanche. But that's my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.